Hey everybody, hope you all had a great weekend. We're back here on To The Point. Beautiful Tuesday. Lots to dive into today from over the weekend and then obviously yesterday in the world of sports. Today we're going to talk some golf, we're going to talk baseball, tennis. We had some NFL news this morning and some thoughts from over the weekend on the preseason games. Sam Howell looked really good for the Washington Commanders last night, ending Baltimore's 24 straight wins in the preseason, which was an NFL record, which is hard to believe. So we have lots to chat about today. We're getting closer and closer to the start of the NFL season. Week 0 in college football this Saturday. Headline game there is Notre Dame and Navy, which is taking place in Dublin, Ireland. So we're not quite there to the big games yet, but we do got some games this weekend to look forward to. So I'm excited for that. But we got to start in the UFC. Because Saturday night, I was genuinely surprised. I rarely am in the world of sports because I normally can see things coming. I normally am fairly good on predictions. If I'm gambling, I'm pretty good at it. But going into the 135-pound title fight between Suga Sean O'Malley and Aljo Sterling, I really didn't give Suga much of a chance. I looked at the matchup and I said Aljo might not be as good a striker as Sean, but he's better in every other aspect of mixed martial arts. He's better grappling. He has better jiu-jitsu. He can do everything else. The clinch game, he's better than Sean. He puts him up against the cage. He's not going to be able to avoid a takedown. So going in, all the factors pointed to, well, Aljamain is going to win this fight. He'll defend his title for the 4th time, which will be one off Alexander Volkanovski for the most title defenses currently in the UFC. But Saturday night, as I was watching, I was stunned. Second round, Aljamain Sterling goes in for a shot. O'Malley blocks it with his left hand beautifully, and he comes over the top with a right, dropping Sterling. He then lands a few 5 to 6 extra shots. Sterling tries to roll around to survive, but in the end, Mark Goddard said that was enough, and O'Malley became the new Bantamweight champion of the world. I didn't see it coming, and I've thought about it over the last couple of days. Why did this take place? Why did Sugar beat Aljo when he shouldn't have beat him? I mean, that is sports. Things happen that you don't expect to happen. That's part of the fun. But why did this result take place? Well, to me, this result took place because Aljamain Sterling fought stupid. I think for once, Aljamain Sterling, who's been one of the most criticized fighters in the entire promotion, said, I'm not going to go take Sean to the ground. I'm not going to beat him in a wrestling match or grappling. I'm going to beat him on the feet. I'm going to knock out Sean O'Malley. I'll have a dramatic moment, and I'll exit the 135-pound division, move up to featherweight, and challenge Alexander Volkanovski in the future. That will be my stamp as Bantamweight champion. But instead, and I think back because I listened to a lot of interviews before these fights, and he was talking to Ariel Helwani on the MMA Hour on Monday, and he talked about not wanting to shoot, not wanting to take him to the ground, of showing people his skills. And unfortunately, his hubris, it hurt him because Sean had one way to win this fight, and that was to knock him out. Because over 25 minutes, I don't think Sean would have beat Aljamain. Because Aljamain's fought in a lot of 25-minute fights, and he's won them all until Saturday night. But he took his biggest weakness and said, I'm going to go toe-to-toe with Sean and fight him at his biggest strength. It's okay to square up. It's okay to meet in the middle. That's how every round starts. But to not try a takedown in the entire first round, to not try it in a minute and change before the fight was over in the second, was just completely baffling to me. I didn't understand the logic. It was just, I think it was an ego thing that he was tired of getting booed. He was tired of people complaining about his fighting style. And ultimately, it caught him. Sean O'Malley's right hand caught him, and he couldn't survive the attack on the ground. And now he's without a championship. For Sean O'Malley, credit to him. A massive underdog, a guy hadn't fought since October. He beat Petr Yan in Abu Dhabi, and he sat and waited on his spot. He waited for the opportunity. Aljo fought Henry Cejudo. He got the win. He said, okay, I'm next. Hops in the cage. It starts the chatter. It starts the animosity, and it builds toward the big fight that it was on Saturday night. So he did his part. He did his thing. And I think for the UFC, they couldn't be happier. To me, the three biggest stars in the UFC right now, I'm going to include Conor, but I don't include him as an active fighter because he hasn't fought in a really long time. But I'll include Conor McGregor because he always has to be there. I'm going to say it's Conor McGregor. Number 2 is easy. It's Israel Adesanya. He is creeping up towards McGregor level of hype, of fandom. And sometimes it's just about people that hate you as well. Lots of people hate Conor McGregor. But that's part of it. People are fixated on you. And number 3 would be Suga Sean O'Malley. He has a style. He has an attitude. He's different from everybody else. He wins his fight. He's in his really nice, I'm sure it's a villa, in his hotel room, smoking a blunt. You don't see that from a lot of people. He's got his hair dyed. He's a wacky character, but people like him because he's different and because he's not what everybody, just your stereotypical fighter. You look at him and say, okay, I know who this guy is. He shows you different sides. So I think the UFC is thrilled with the result because they get their star with the championship around his waist. A guy, in my opinion, who wants to be an active fighter. He's already talking about defending the title in December. I don't know if that'll happen because they have enough fights to make over the next 4 months to close out 2023, as I talked about last week. But it's nice to know that you have somebody that's like, hey, put me on that December card in Vegas. He already wants it. He's already called out his next opponent, the only man who's beaten him in the UFC, Marlon Chito Vera. So he's already creating the next feud. He's already selling the next fight. He gets the game. Some guys just never figure it out. He's 28. He understands the business. He knows what he's doing. He's now a champion. He gets pay-per-view buys during these events. And it's awesome for him. So what do they do now? O'Malley wants to fight Chito. Sure, there's heat there. Chito's beaten O'Malley. He wants to avenge that loss. It makes sense. But is it the fight? Is it the best fight to make? And I don't think it is. To me, the next fight to make is a simple one. It is Suga Sean O'Malley against Merab Dvalishvili. And this is going to be tricky because now Aljo Sterling, who said on Monday that he was exiting the 135-pound division, win or lose, already wants a rematch. He's not going to 145, doesn't have the confidence yet to go fight the likes of Alexander Volkanovski, and thinks he can beat O'Malley and wants to get his title back. Okay? Well, his teammate, one of his best friends, Merab Dvalishvili, is number 1 in the Bantamweight rankings. He's beaten everybody practically in the division. And these two men will not fight each other. They've already stated it. Merab would have already fought for the title, but him and Aljo are too tight. They will not do battle in the cage. So do we see a power struggle between the two to see who gets the next title opportunity? Aljo says it's Merab's time. He said that, quote, on Monday. Well, he faces a loss, so now is it Merab's time? Or is it time for Merab to wait a little bit longer, continue his wait to finally become champion in the UFC? I think Merab and Suga Sean O'Malley is a fight that sells better on a rematch. When they booked O'Malley and Aljo Sterling, Merab came in the cage, put on O'Malley's coat, and it started something. They started beefing on Twitter, and it's continued. Merab had a hand injury. He's going to be back healthy. He said he's already started sparring. He could fight in December. Aljamain defended his title 3 times. Very awesome stuff from him. Beat TJ Dillashaw, former champion. He obviously beat Petr Yan to win the title. He beat him twice. And he beat Henry Cejudo, a 2-division champion and an Olympic gold medalist. That's a hell of a resume. That's a hell of a resume. And it's not talked about enough because people don't like Aljamain. People boo him and they hate his style. Is there a better resume than what he's done? Volkanovski, maybe, because he's beaten Max Holloway 3 times. But okay, you've beaten Brian Ortega, solid fighter. You've beaten Yair Rodriguez, very crafty, nimble, extremely difficult opponent to prepare for. But those 3 guys that Aljamain Sterling beat are all the best, are all great, great fighters. In particular, Cejudo, 2-division champion and an Olympic fucking gold medalist. I mean, come on. But in saying that, it's difficult because I think does he deserve a rematch? Yes. But the UFC has to get out of doing these rematches because they take a long time to book. They're normally not worth the payoff. Adesanya, Pereira, pushed to the side. But Holloway, Volkanovski, 2 and 3, were they that great of fights? Not really. They weren't that interesting. Sure, they're 2 greats, but were they great battles? Not really. I think Merab is the fight to make for O'Malley because I think it's the most difficult challenge. Merab's not going to fight like Aljo did. He's going to shoot for 100 takedowns in that 25-minute fight. He has constant energy. And that is a tough, tough test for Suga Sean O'Malley's first title defense. I think he's doing 2 things calling out Chito Vera. I think he's saying this is going to sell. People like Chito. It's going to do great numbers. We'll sell out T-Mobile, all that. I also think he knows it's a fight that he is going to win this time. Maybe he'll get caught like Aljamain Sterling did on Saturday night. But to me, he thinks he can win this fight. He thinks the first one was a fluke, and it's one that his first title defense is not as big of a concern. It's a fight. Anything can happen. But you're telling me him fighting Chito is more worrisome than him fighting Merab, Aljo again, or even a guy like Henry Cejudo? No way. Plus, Chito was recently dominated by Corey Sandhagen, and we're going to get to this. I thought Chito Vera lost his fight on Saturday night. I thought there was a couple bullshit things from the officials, quite frankly. They got a number of fights wrong. I thought Pedro Munoz beat Chito Vera. Clearly, Cheeto won the third round. I thought Pedro won the first two. It was close, but some of the scorecards on Saturday night were just out to whack. I don't know what people were doing. But for Aljo, I'm interested to see what he said. He wants the automatic rematch. I don't think he's going to get it. I don't think the UFC wants to book that fight. I think the UFC respects him, but they don't want to do that right away. Plus, if Suga really does want to defend the title in December, which again, I'm not sure happens, because they want to somehow fit McGregor in December. We'll see. You have the Prohaska and Pereira fight for the light heavyweight title. That's going to happen at some point. They still haven't booked Leon Edwards and Colby Covington. When's that happening? Likely before the end of the year, but it's reported that John Jones doesn't want Colby Covington on his card in New York. So that would mean the only other time you can do it is in December. And you don't need O'Malley on that card if you're doing Edwards and Covington. Save that for 2024. If I'm Aljamain, I could look at it a number of ways. Sure, I want my rematch, but if I have to fight somebody that I've already beaten to get my rematch, I don't really have interest in that. He's fought Henry Cejudo. He's fought Petr Yan. Who's he going to have to fight? Sandhagen's out 6 months with elbow surgery. If he sits and he doesn't want to fight the rest of this year, I totally get it. He's fought a lot. If he says, I'm going to wait till 2024 to fight again, and O'Malley's first title defense is not against Sterling, then who knows? Maybe it's Merab that gets the championship, then you can't fight. Here's what I'd recommend. It's an interesting one. He wanted to move up to 145 after this fight, win or lose. But he's had a change of heart. I think he should move up to 145 because I think this weight cut's really killing him to get down to 135 pounds. Go up to 145. And what I think is interesting for him, Volkanovski saying he's not getting the next title opportunity. That's going to go to Mr. Water Bottle. That's going to be probably early next year, I'm guessing. But that'll go to Ilia Topuria. What if Aljo fought the winner of this weekend's main event? And I'm projecting here, but this weekend, Max Holloway is fighting the Korean Zombie in Singapore. And I believe Max Holloway is going to win this fight because Max Holloway looked great against Arnold Allen, and the Korean Zombies looked a little spent. Holloway gets a man's land. Sterling's a little bit of no man's land. What if they meet at 145 and you could book it as a number one contenders fight? At least for Aljo's side. He needs a big win to get an opportunity to Alexander Volkanovski. There's nobody bigger to fight than to fight Max Holloway. A former champion, still at the top of his game. If he can go up to 145 pounds and beat Max, then he deserves his chance at Volkanovski. And I think he would earn some respect in Volk's eyes because Volk and Max might have fought 3 times, and yes, Volk is 3-0, but I think he respects Max Holloway. If he beats the gatekeeper of that division who's still in his prime, that is a way to get to another title opportunity. But it's at 145 and not 135. It's an option. And I think that's a fight Max Holloway would take. He's talked about wanting to move up, potentially, because he doesn't see a whole lot of fun fights at 145 pounds. He could move up to lightweight. Holloway and Poirier maybe could fight again. That's a fight that I think Dustin would take. Maybe Holloway and Gaethje could meet potentially down the road. But I think Sterling and Max Holloway at 145 pounds is a really fun fight. It's one that'll excite both men, and it gets them out of their predicament where I don't see an exit ramp for either one of them. If Ilya Topuria beats Alexander Volkanovski whenever they meet, the fight's not booked yet. But whenever they meet, and if Ilya Topuria pulls off the upset, does what nobody else can do, and Holloway has beaten Arnold Allen, he's beaten the Korean Zombie, and he's beaten Aljamain Sterling, a former champion, he would deserve another chance, another crack at the title. At 145 pounds, whether Volk is there or not. Plus, Volk wants to talk about moving up and fighting at lightweight. So things can happen. MMA is a weird sport. You're champion, and then you just get caught and something happens. Volk seems to get better with every fight as he ages. He's a freak. But Max Holloway he's looked pretty damn good too in his return. And I think he'll look pretty damn good this weekend in Singapore. So there's options for a lot of these guys, which is a good thing. O'Malley Sterling can headline a fight night, no doubt about it. In an arena with fans, not a Apex card or anything like that. Fans in the building. That is 100% a main event. A really captivating fight, and I think people would be interested in it. But congrats to Suga Sean O'Malley. I don't know what they're going to do. If Cheeto gets the next title opportunity, it's because Sean is calling the shots. And that's the fight he wants, because Merab, Henry, both more deserving, in my opinion, than Cheeto Vera. Sandhagen's to the outside because he can't fight. He's having surgery. But he is improving. Sean is in the cage itself. He's not just a star outside. He's getting better in it. He didn't get to show off his grappling or his wrestling in this fight because he didn't have to, because Aljamain didn't press him, didn't force him to. But that's why I think the Merab fight is fun, because Merab will force him to show his defense, to see if he can get out of bad situations. Sterling decided not to. He paid for it. I think it's a learning lesson for a lot of his opponents. In the co-main event, we saw Zhang Weili defend her title for the first time against Amanda Lemos since winning it in November against... Who did she beat now? Oh, if I had her name right in the top of my head. She's pregnant right now. The woman that she beat to win the title, and that's going to bother me, so I'm going to look that up. But Zhang Weili, Saturday night. Carla Esparza. There we go. Carla Esparza. Zhang Weili goes in to defend her title for the first time since regaining her championship. And it was a thing of beauty. She outstruck Amanda Lemos 288-21 on significant strikes. She was stronger than Amanda. She landed her punches better. She was moving incredibly well. She looked so confident. And she's just been a different fighter since getting back, since winning her title again, and really fighting Joanna Jędrzejczyk for the second time, knocked her out, submitted Carla Esparza in New York, and then she came very close to getting a finish on Saturday night, but credit to Amanda Lemos, who is a warrior. She was getting beaten. In the first round, she had a chance at a submission. After that, it was one-way traffic. It was completely all Zhang Weili And she's just a dominant champion. She's looked great. She's working on her English, which is good to see for her. That she's even doing more to trying to become more of a star and talk to the audience in Boston. So what do you do with Zhang Weili now? She's looked great. She's one of the best in the world. I think of female fighters currently, I think it's hard to argue that she's not the best. You look at the current champions for women, Alexa Grasso, Zhang Weili. We don't have a bantamweight champion now that Amanda Nunes is gone. I think Zhang Weili is the best female fighter in the UFC for sure. I think Kayla Harrison is probably the best fighter, probably the best female fighter in the world right now, and Larissa Pacheco is very good as well in the PFL. But Kayla Harrison, but Zhang Weili in the UFC, definitely. So in her division, you have number one, currently Esparza. She had a baby. She's not available to fight. Rose Namajunas, moving up in weight. She's not available. Yang Xiaonan, definitely an option. She's another Chinese fighter that would sell well. And number four, you have Tatiana Suarez. That's the fight for me. Tatiana is undefeated. She is fresh off 2 wins this year after a long injury. She submitted Montana De La Rosa, and then she submitted former champion Jessica Andrade a couple weeks ago in Nashville. She's so smooth. She's extremely strong, like Zhang Weili, and it's the fight to make. I look at Zhang Weili as more of a striker. And yes, she can submit you because she has many times in the past, but she's got some deadly power in those hands. She knocked out on Jacek with a brutal, just nasty. She had that gruesome fight with Joanna in March of 2020. She knocked out Jessica Andrade. So she's had a lot of impressive victories, not just by decision, but you have a striker with lots of strength against Tatiana Suarez, who's a very strong woman, who's got that wrestling, grappling background, and she is so crafty on the ground. If she gets you, it's extremely hard to get out of her guard, and before you know it, she will get you in a submission attempt, and the fight's over. And yes, she's only had 2 fights since returning from injury, but they went from Montana De La Rosa, who was not ranked, to then her fighting Jessica Andrade, a former champion, and she's done them both. So you have 2 options. You have Yan Xiaonan, and you have Tatiana Suarez, basically. It's not smart for the UFC to have those 2 women fight each other to see who will fight the champion, because you want to have contenders. You want to have people that are in line down the road. Because behind them, you already have a fight book. Mackenzie Dern is fighting Jessica Andrade in New York. So that's done. Marina Rodriguez has a fight book next month. There's nobody that really makes sense. Maybe you can give Yan Xiaonan Amanda Lemos, potentially, down the road here. Verna Handiroba is another woman who has looked very solid in the cage. She defeated Marina Rodriguez. Maybe she gets a fight against Yang Xiaonan in the meantime, and that's another kind of a big contender fight for the 2 women. But Tatiana Suarez and Zhang Weili is the fight for me. It's the fight that excites me the most. I think it makes the most sense. And credit to Zhang Weili, because she's looked great. She's doing everything right to build her name a little bit more, build her profile. And she looks so confident, so strong. She's got nasty ground and pound. She's just improving every aspect of her game. And she went 25 minutes. which is grueling. You got to go to the weight cut and everything. I don't think she has many bruises because 288 to 21. It was just complete one-way traffic. If she had to fight before the end of the year, I think she probably could. As I said, I don't think that's going to happen for a lot of these championship fights because there's not a whole lot of time. There's not a whole lot of room to make these fights happen. Could they have another title fight on the New York card? Certainly. I don't think that's a bad idea. They obviously have Grasso fighting Shevchenko in a couple weeks. But at UFC 295, you added that Dern fight with Andrade, Jones, Miocic is the main event. Tatiana Suarez, Zhang Weili. It's a quick turnaround. But could it happen? Sure. Both women fought around the same time. There's no significant injuries. Maybe you could fit them on that card. Maybe they could fight in December. Or it could always be next year because, as I keep saying, the year's flying by. It's already August 22nd today, which is crazy. But amazing performance from Zhang Weili. The tertiary fight on the card, Ian Gary. Ian Gary, to me, the top prospect in the entire UFC right now. The hype train is alive and well after another dominant victory over Neil Magny, where he had a 30-24 on a judge's scorecard, a couple 30-26s. But he nearly broke Neil Magny's legs. Every time he landed a leg kick, Neil Magny fell. He would make him get back up. And it was so well put together. Confident, landing his strikes, landing the leg kicks. He has the distance advantage over a guy like Neil Magny, who's much shorter than him. He took advantage of it. And ultimately, he did not get the decision. But even Dana White said after, he looked pretty fucking good in the fight. And that's all that matters. People still love Ian Gary. He knows what he's doing as well. He went on the mic after the fight and says, I want to fight Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, the best striker in the division. For me to be the best striker in the division, I have to beat the best striker. At the podium after the event, Dana White has said, Wonderboy said no. Not going to be against Ian Gary for Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. It's a no. But then Dana White says, but it doesn't matter because we already have his next fight booked, the next location, but we're not revealing it yet, which is interesting. I 100% believe Ian Gary will be fighting in New York in November. He fights in Boston, Dana White's card. And then he gets to fight in New York because that's another one of Dana White's favorites. John Jones is on that event. Like I said, could Ian Gary be in a co-main event at this point of his career? I think so. He was the tertiary fight on this card. He could be the co-main event. So if they already have it booked and they already know what they're doing in the 170-pound division, I had to start to think, well, who could it be? Who's he going to fight? Because Ian Gary is now 11th in the rankings, just outside the top 10. He's not going to be fighting anybody behind him, so there has to be... Here's the options for me. I'm going to start at number 9 with Sean Brady. Sean Brady was supposed to fight against Jack Della Maddalena in... What card was this? I think this was in Miami. Either Miami or New Jersey, but I think it was Miami. And it didn't happen. Or no, it was International Fight Week. Stupid me. It was International Fight Week. In early July. Fights off. Brady had an injury. So he couldn't fight. They didn't rebook that fight. JDL is fighting Kevin Holland in a couple weeks at the Mexican Independence Day event at T-Mobile. So that's booked. Sean Brady is number 9th in the rankings. He's got one loss in the UFC, and that is to Bilal Muhammad, who is currently basically a number one contender for the 170-pound title. So 15-1, one loss. He's had and he's still an incredible fighter. That is an awesome fight. Two guys that can really scrap, two guys that are great on their feet, love to use the leg kicks. That's a great kickboxing fight in an MMA ring, really, and that's a fun one. So that's number one for me. Jeff Neal at 8. Jeff Neal was supposed to fight Ian Gary this weekend, but he had to pull out with an injury. Maybe they won't want to do it again in case Jeff Neal pulls out. But it would be a fight for Ian Gary from 11th to 8th in the rankings. Again, he moves up. I think the UFC wants to slow play this. I don't think they want Ian Gary going for a championship right away. Leon Edwards has to fight Colby Covington. The winner of that fight has to fight Bilal Muhammad. So it's going to be some time before Ian Gary even has the thought about fighting for a title. So Jeff Neal would make some sense. 7 is Wonder Boy. Apparently not happening. Wonder Boy and Kamaru Usman have been linked. I'm interested in that fight. That would be another one you could put New York. Because I think Usman would love to fight New York. Wonder Boy, who doesn't want to fight at the Mecca. So then there's 6. Shavkat Rakhmonov. Shavkat was supposed to fight Kelvin Gastelum at this Mexican Independence Day card in middle September 16th. Gastelum out, injured. That fight has not been rebooked, to my knowledge, although I did see a picture of Gastelum training this morning, so maybe he's back on the mend. They could rebook that fight at 170 pounds return for Kelvin Gastelum. But Gary Shavkat, that's a super fight waiting to happen. That's a super fight waiting to happen, and I don't think they're going to do it right now. I don't think they want that fight yet. It will happen, 100%. That's like a main event. Rakhmonov and Ian Gary. I don't think Dana White's going to pull the trigger on that fight. It's huge. It's huge, huge business. But if you have John Jones in New York, you get Kamaru Usman, former 170-pound champion, against Wonderboy Thompson, everybody's fan favorite, and you could get Ian Gary against Sean Brady in New York. Those 3 fights are fucking money. Those 3 fights are as good as it's going to get in a November card this late in the year. To me, they say they already have the fight made. I think it's going to be Sean Brady and Ian Gary. And I couldn't be happier about it. I could be completely wrong, and maybe Dana White says we're going to go over the top and we're getting the Ian Gary, Shavkat Rakhmonov fight right now. 2 guys undefeated in their prime, but I don't see that happening. They don't want that yet. It's too early. It's too early. Let Shavkat fight Gastelum when he's healthy. Let Ian Gary fight Sean Brady. Still Gilbert Burns hanging around in the top 5 that one of them will have to deal with eventually. Bilal Muhammad, Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman. Lots happening there. But Ian Gary is a bona fide star. And you look at 170 pounds. Jack Della Maddalena, 14. Kevin Holland, 13. Gary, 11. Sean Brady, 9. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, 7. Rakhmonov, 6. Gilbert Burns, 5. Bilal, 3. Colby, Kamaru, Leon as champion. That's a loaded division. A loaded division. Bantamweight is great. I think 170 is becoming really, really competitive. With a lot of great fighters, and it's going to be tough to book these fights because somebody has to lose every fight, so you push somebody down. You have Rachmanov, Gary. Jack Della Maddalena only has 2 losses in his career, so a lot of these guys are pretty clean. Sean Brady's got 1 loss. It's something else. But they say they already have his fight booked. I think it's going to be Sean Brady in New York. So I hope anyway. The rest of the card, Mario Bautista beats Damon Blackshear. Again, this is another decision I disagreed with. I thought Blackshear won this fight. Thought he won in the clinch. He got him on the ground a number of times. He was landing some good strikes. He took the fight in short notice. He looked gassed in the 3rd round. 100%. Just like the Cheeto fight, where Cheeto clearly won the 3rd round. I thought Bautista clearly won the 3rd round. But I thought Blackshear did enough in the first 2 rounds to win, as I thought about Pedro Munoz. The judges disagreed. Big win for Bautista. No fault of Blackshear. Taking the fight that short of notice, I thought he fought really well. He'll get another good opportunity after doing the UFC a solid, I'm sure. The undercard, Brad Katona became the 2-time The Ultimate Fighter champion, narrowly beating Cody Gibson in the fight of the night, really. Went back and forth, just throwing haymakers at one another. And it's a great moment for Brad because he gets back into the UFC. He's a John Kavanagh guy. He works with Conor McGregor. So he gets back in the UFC with an opportunity to see what he can do now, a second time around, a better fighter. And Cody Gibson, who teaches high school history, got a UFC contract as well. He fought so well, and apparently Dana White said this, the fans just started pouring out to him on social media and seeing him at the arena, saying you got to keep Cody around. He became kind of a fan favorite on The Ultimate Fighter. He fought incredibly well in Boston. And so it's a great thing. You have Brad Katona, who ultimately wins the fight, and Cody Gibson, both getting UFC contracts. Both are sticking around. So a really good heartfelt moment. 2 guys who didn't really enjoy each other in the tough house do have a great battle, show a lot of respect after the fight. So credit to both men. In the lightweight final, Kurt Holobaugh, what a moment for him. 2nd round submission victory over Austin Hubbard. 36-year-old veteran is back in the UFC. He 36. In his first fight on The Ultimate Fighter, he was getting destroyed. First round, he's fighting really Conor's guy. And first round, he's getting whooped. Second round, he's on the ground. The guy makes a mistake. He puts him in a guillotine, and he finds a way to get the submission. Second round, he fights his buddy Jason Knight. They do battle, and he finds a way to win it. And he comes all the way back to win this against Austin Hubbard, his teammate on Team Chandler. Another incredible story. Seeing him at 36, not give up on the dream, go on The Ultimate Fighter, a UFC vet who was cut, now gets back in. Just his perseverance, I thought he had the best fight of the entire Ultimate Fighter against Jason Knight. They went at it with one another. And to say for him, on The Ultimate Fighter, 3 wins, 3 finishes, and he's back in the UFC. Tough to beat that resume for him and what he accomplished. So another awesome moment for Kurt Holobaugh in getting back in. The bad moment was Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman returned from over 2 years from that gruesome leg injury. One of the ugliest in pro sports history. And he's battled back, he was training, and he's back in the cage. For once, I agree with Dana White, and he needs to retire. He's in a wheelchair after. They're saying he might have torn either his MCL or his ACL after having that massive leg break. It's just you want to be able to walk. You want to be able to do things. He's 39 years old. He's a former champion. He's a great in the UFC. But Brad Tavares even said it was tough fighting him because he didn't really want to hurt him. He didn't want to do that much damage because he saw the leg, and you think about that going in. Chris said this was a good chance to get back in the octagon. He'll be back stronger the next time. I don't know. Just didn't look great to me. It was just a nasty scene just to see him hobble around after. And yes, he got through the 15 minutes and he didn't get finished, and it wasn't that bad where his leg gave out and he had to call it that way. But he just doesn't have the same spunk. He isn't the same athlete as he used to be, unfortunately. Other fight news. I mentioned Mackenzie Dern, Jessica Andrade in New York in November. Manel Kape, Kai Kara France is off for the Sydney pay-per-view. Kai Kara France got a concussion. So unfortunately, his team says, don't fight. It's not a great time. It's tough for him because he's a native. He's from New Zealand, but he trains in Australia with Volkanovski and with Israel Adesanya. So it's a tough break for him. But Manel Kape's going to fight Dos Santos, who was supposed to be on the Contender Series. His opponent weighed in too heavy, couldn't fight, so he's going to get a UFC fight against a top 10 guy, Manel Kape, in Australia. Massive opportunity for him. And a great thing by the UFC, they needed somebody to step in. It's not easy to find somebody to go fight in Australia in 3 weeks. You offer a guy a contract against a top 10 guy, he's going to go do it. So he gets an opportunity. Michelle Pereira is booked. Also, Michelle Pereira is booked against Marc-Andre Barriault from Canada. He missed weight against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in Utah. He will now move to 185, and they'll fight on a fight night at the Apex. So, and he's a really good fighter in and of itself. Marc-Andre Barriault's continued to get better, the Canadian. Michelle Pereira was on a 5-fight winning streak, couldn't make the 170 pounds. So now he's in an entirely new weight class. He gets Marc-Andre Barriault. It's a step down in ranking for sure. At 170 pounds, he was surging. He could have been number 7 in the rankings with a win. But he moves to 185. I think it's a less dangerous division. And if he can make weight and find his stride there, he could be dangerous. So we'll see what happens. But that's the UFC update today. Interesting weekend. A lot happens on these pay-per-views. This upcoming weekend, Singapore, an early morning start time. Max Holloway, Korean Zombie in the main event rematch. Anthony Smith, Ryan Spann, co-main at light heavy. Giga Chikadze and Alex Caceres is fighting. You have Aaron Blanchfield, Tyler Santos, might be the best fight in the card for saying things. Junior Tafa, Parker Porter, you got a heavyweight bout there. So should be a little interesting card in Singapore. You have Paris the week after, and then another pay-per-view before we know it. Let's pivot to baseball. This morning, this is just news from last week, Wander Franco was placed on the administrative leave by Major League Baseball, basically meaning he is suspended indefinitely, still getting paid, but he's not eligible to play in games. He's not really involved in team activities, but he's suspended for as long as the investigation takes. This happened to Trevor Bauer when he was going through his stuff. This happened to Deshaun Watson back in the day with the NFL. So this is what happens. This is what happens to players when you're in stuff like this. We talked about Wander Franco last week. No real news, no real updates other than the fact that he's suspended. That was the news. It's not, okay, he's been caught. He sure it doesn't sound good. I'll put it that way. Doesn't sound good. But we'll see. Maybe things change. Maybe something will pivot. But that's all we know thus far about Wander Franco. Over the weekend, the Seattle Mariners are red hot. They go into Houston and they sweep the Houston Astros, and they do it in really dominating fashion. Played great and actually resulted in the Houston Astros having a players-only meeting after the game on Sunday to talk about what the hell was going on, getting swept at home by a division rival. Seattle's getting good pitching. Their bats are red hot, and they have surpassed the Toronto Blue Jays for the final wildcard spot in the American League. Cal Riley's hitting bombs. Teoscar Hernandez finding his stride. Julio Rodriguez might be the hottest player in baseball. They go in and beat the South Side of Chicago, the White Sox, 14-2 last night, continuing their winning ways. What I will say about the American League and the National League with the extra wildcard spot is there's a race. It's fun. Seattle, Houston, Toronto, all decided by a game and a half. The second and third wildcard spots. Every game is important. Every series is important. If you get an opponent that's lesser than, you need to take advantage of it. Looking at Seattle, you play the White Sox in late August. That's a good thing. They stink. The Blue Jays chasing a team like Houston, a team like Seattle. You get Baltimore. Toronto Blue Jays are 2-8 against the Baltimore Orioles this season. The Baltimore Orioles have the best record in the American League. I read an article yesterday that this is the gut check time for the Blue Jays. They need either to play extremely well against Baltimore or be 100% dedicated to the wild card spot. I thought it was... See, I couldn't even say the article correctly because it was a stupid article. The division, that's not the goal here. Just to make everybody aware, the Toronto Blue Jays are trying to make the playoffs, period. Whether that's a third wild card, second wild card, if they invent a fourth one to get them in, they'll take it. It's not about the division. Baltimore and Tampa Bay, who are also red hot. Tampa Bay doesn't have players. Tampa Bay is out without their best pitcher and their best player, yet they smoked the Angels over the weekend. Smoked them. Now they got a series against the Rockies, who aren't a very good team. Maybe they'll lose all 3 games. I don't know. But that is not where this is going for the Blue Jays. And if they go on to find a huge comeback in late August through September and they win the division like 2015, where they weren't 8.5 back in late August, then I'll eat crow. But they're not going to win the division. For the Toronto Blue Jays, it's about finding consistency. If they can find a stretch where their bats and their arms are working at the same time, they are a dangerous team. Their big problem for 2 months is for 10-game stretch, the bats are great, their pitching stinks up the joint. And the next 10, their pitching is a 2.03 ERA, and they're averaging a 0.48 average in runners in scoring position. They can't put it all together. Bo Bichette being back helps because he's their best batter. He's been their superstar player this year. Springer's found it a little bit. Brandon Belt has had a great second half of the season. But they need to put it all together. You have Kikuchi, Gausman, and Barrios pitching in this 3-game set. You couldn't ask for 3 better. Those are your 3 playoff starters to start at playoff series, in my opinion. So if you had a playoff series against Baltimore eventually, this is your rotation. Except Kikuchi would be pivoted to 2. Other than that, that's who you're going with. You swept the Red Sox in your last series against a division rival, so you have some success. You have a good feel about playing your division finally. But to me, this is not about sweeping Baltimore, so you're back in the divisional race. I don't agree with that statement. I think it's stupid, quite frankly. Like, it's not the truth of the situation. It's about making the playoffs. You can't lose to Baltimore, not because you're going to be 11.5 back if you get swept in the division. It's because you need to keep pace with Seattle and the Houston Astros, who are both ahead of you and have played better than you for long stretches of the season. Houston was down 3-0 last night in the first inning. They found a way to come back to win the game 9-4. Runners in scoring position, they take advantage, they hit home runs. That needs to happen more often for the Toronto Blue Jays. Simple as that, because their pitching has been good. You have a big day on Sunday where you score a bunch of runs. Can you score some runs against Baltimore? Because again, their pitching, not the strength of their team. Grayson Rodriguez against Yusei Kikuchi tonight, that's a huge advantage on paper for the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman and Anthony Santander, the Orioles can hit. We know that, and they love to hit against the Blue Jays. They do it in spades. But that's the race there. The Angels call up their top prospect. Too little, too late, Los Angeles. The city's underwater, the team's underwater. They're 9 games back, and their season's over. Over. They're right there with the Yankees, who are 9.5 back. The Yankees, who also stink, who got swept by the Red Sox over the weekend at home. Woof. 3 games below 500. You lost 18-4 against the Rays at home. You call up your top prospect. He's batting .250 over 2 games. All right, great, good for him. But it's something else what that team did, and they tried to win. Credit to them. Not really, because it was stupid. I said it's not a smart decision for them to trade to bring players in. Oh, it's so stupid to trade Shohei Ohtani. You got to try to win when he's there. You got to make him feel loved. Oh my God, get over it. Your team's not good enough to make the playoffs. I don't care who you trade for. Lucas Giolito, okay, Randall Grichuk, give me a GMAB, give me a break. Now you're a playoff team? You're a contender again? Okay, sure. Makes sense to me. I mean, come on. Now you're calling up the top prospect to make it seem fun. Trading for these pieces, is that going to make Shohei Ohtani want to stick around? Because, oh my God, the team I'm playing for was willing to add. Well, they were willing to add, and you still couldn't make the postseason, meaning Ohtani will go through his entire Angels career without touching the postseason. Where he spends his off seasons in Seattle, they didn't make the playoffs for the longest time, but they made the playoffs last year. They won a wildcard series on the road against Toronto. What if they make the playoffs again this year? Maybe the piece that puts them over the top is one Shohei Ohtani. Heard he loves the area. His hero, Ichiro Suzuki, played there. Then there's the Dodgers. They're pretty good too. Had a pretty good run in August, as we talked about. It's always an option. Or you could stay in Anaheim with Mike Trout and miss the playoffs by like 12 games when the season's over and think, well, I probably should stay because the team added the trade deadline. They did it in my honor, my benefit. They did it for me. Okay. Organizations, bigger conversation, want you they want to make you feel like you owe them something. Hey, we added this year, so you have to stick around. Right. But when you no longer bring them value, they'll get rid of you. And I have no problem with that either, because it's the circle of life. When you're old and you're sick, you die. Sometimes you don't got to be old. You just be young, sick, you die. You walk out into traffic, there's a huge semi coming at you, you're going to be dead. That's called life. But organizations, they do a solid, even though they're doing themselves a solid because they want to sell tickets and they want to get playoff revenue. So they're not doing benefit for you, but they'll sell it that way, which more power to them, but it's bullshit and everybody knows it. Well, apparently not everybody knows it. But Shohei Ohtani doesn't owe them anything. He's the biggest free agent sports history. Right up there. Tom Brady was 41 when he was a free agent. He's a little older guy. Not the same thing. Shohei Ohtani's in his prime. Yeah, it's rare. It's rare. You see a player get to free agency. LeBron, probably the biggest since LeBron, when LeBron took his talents to South Beach. When LeBron took his talents to South Beach. What a statement that was. What a day that was at the Boys and Girls Club in Greenwich, Connecticut. But yeah, that would be my equivalent. Is Ohtani being a free agent is like LeBron in 2010? 2010 when he's talking to Jim Gray. Where does Ohtani go? Does he stay? Does he go? Drama. We'll see. But not only that, you have the Angels are out of it because they stink. But their division is heating up because Texas has lost 5 straight games. They got walked off by the Arizona D-backs last night. Houston trails them by a game and a half for the division, and Seattle only trails them by 2 games. So they were red hot. Now all of a sudden they're struggling, and the 2 teams behind them are right on their heels. They got swept by the Brewers. They lost to the Diamondbacks last night. So they're no lock to make the playoffs yet either. They need to find their way quick and in a hurry. You get Orioles, Blue Jays this week. Red Sox are in Houston. Red Sox are 4 back, technically still in it. The Mariners, White Sox series, not because the White Sox were just in, but the Mariners. Texas, D-backs, and you got the Marlins playing the Padres. The Padres, who are currently, let's see, 5.5 back in the wild card. Not going to make the postseason. Not going to make the postseason, yet they kept Blake Snell, who has the second best ERA on the second half of the season, beyond only Yusei Kikuchi, but he's got a 2.65 ERA for the season with 10 wins. And a free agent to be. He'll get a pretty penny on the open market. Let's pivot to golf. BMW, the second leg of the 3-leg PGA playoffs, took place this past weekend at the Olympia Golf and Country Club in Illinois. And it looked for a while that it was Scotty Scheffler or Matty Fitzpatrick. I'm watching on Sunday, and it's these 2 guys, everybody else 4 or 5 strokes back, but then Viktor Hovland starts making birdies, and he's chipping away, and Scheffler and Fitzpatrick are actually playing pretty well. But Viktor Hovland ended up shooting a course record 61, went 9 under at that golf course, and wins the event by 2 strokes over Matthew Fitzpatrick and Scotty Scheffler, who both shot 4 under. So he shoots a course record. He wins his second event of the season. He won the Memorial Jacks tournament, and then he wins the BMW. So 2 huge wins on the season for Hovland. Still hasn't won a major. That's going to happen, but he wins these 2, and he vaults himself into second in the FedEx Cup standings with the top 30 teeing off on Thursday. He is now number 2 behind only Scotty Scheffler, so he'll start 2 strokes behind him with the format. And I'll pull that up for you guys. It's something I don't like it myself, the way they do this. I find it the worst part. You have a great season, a lot of great golf, and then you get to this, and I'm just like, well, it's just a cloggy way of doing it to me. I'm trying to find the format here. PGA Tour. So, as I pull this up, Scotty Scheffler will start the tournament at 10 under par. He will be in the lead. Fall behind him will be Viktor Hovland, who is in second place. He will be 8 under par. Third, you have Rory McIlroy. He'll start at -7. Jon Rahm, fourth, -6. Lucas Glover, -5. Homa. From 6 until 10, they all start at -4. Then you have 11 to 15, -3. 16 to 20, -2. 21 to 25, -1. And then 26 to 30 are at even par. So they start 10 strokes back of the leader. So what I don't like about it is you have no chance of winning. If you're Sepp Straka, Spieth, Hatton, Grillo, Burns, you're 10 strokes back. You're not winning this event. Now it's great to see some of these guys make it. Sepp Straka is 30th. He made it here because Theegala bogeyed 18 and Denny McCarthy bogeyed 17 and 18. So a disastrous end for those 2 guys. They were in position to make it. Straka and Spieth squeak in. 2 Canadians are moving on. Nick Taylor is at 22, so he's going to start at 1 under. You have Corey Connors is at 19, 2 under. So 2 Canadians are at the Tour Championship. Both guys winning an event on the PGA Tour this season. So a pretty good showing for Canadians this year all around. Looking at other names that are kind of notable, you have Ricky Fowler, Xander Schauffele at -3. Ricky winning an event this year was huge to get him back into this mix, to be playing at this event. Tommy Fleetwood is here. Max Homa, Lucas Glover. The fact that he's starting in 5th position, only 5 strokes off the lead, winning back-to-back events, being in this position at 43 years old, crazy. So, again, it's going to be great theater. The names at the top of the leaderboard, when you have Rahm, McIlroy, Scheffler, all within a number of strokes of one another, it will be a great, and you're playing for $15 million. The winner of the Tour Championship wins $15 million. So you don't need any more added incentive. It's there. It's go get the money. It's be the Tour champion. Rory McIlroy won it in 2022. Patrick Cantlay won it in 2021. So we'll see who can come away with it this year. That will start Thursday at East Lake. That'll go Thursday through Sunday, and we will crown a Tour champion. Other news from over the weekend, Novak Djokovic played Carlos Alcaraz in Cincinnati. If you missed it, the match went nearly 4 hours, a grueling back and forth, 5-7, 7-6, 7-6 win for Novak Djokovic. His first tournament in the United States in a very long time. Because of COVID, he couldn't play. He gets back, plays Cincinnati. He did not drop a set until the final. Alcaraz had played a ton of tennis, and these two had another thriller. They had a thriller at Wimbledon. They have an awesome match here. And the U.S. Open starts on Monday. They will be number 1 and number 2 in the rankings. And perhaps we get another Grand Slam final between these two guys. It's a lot of work to get there before we see it. But I think it was important for Novak to win that match, to show Carlos, yes, I can beat you. And he beat him at the French. He's now beat him on hard court. He's beaten him on the clay. But these two guys are the two best men's tennis players in the world. It's really not that close. If Carlos is on his game, and what hurts him is he starts slow. So he'll lose a set. He has to play more tennis than you might want him to. But he took 3 sets to beat Hubert Hurkacz, but he battled back and won it. He took three sets to beat Max Purcell. He took 3 sets to beat Tommy Paul. He took, I believe in this other match, he took 3 sets as well. That might have been on Tuesday. He took 3. So every match he had in Cincinnati was a 3-set match because he took 3 sets to beat Jordan Thompson. So he had to play a ton of tennis. They will get to rest up this week, and then the U.S. Open starts in New York on Monday. So that's fun. Under the lights at the U.S. Open. Hard to beat it. Late August, early September. Fun stuff. The women's side, Coco Gauff won her first Masters 1000 event, defeating Karolina Muchova, the French Open finalist, in the final. She won. This is her second win in 3 weeks. She won in Washington. She made it to the quarterfinals in Canada, and then she wins in Cincinnati. She's added Brad Gilbert to her team. She looks more and more confident. She might drop a serve, but she's so aggressive on the return. She beat world number 1 Iga Swiatek to win Cincinnati. She beat her on Saturday afternoon. So the way she's playing, she is a real threat to win the U.S. Open. Now the thing is, you see a lot of success from these women. Sometimes it doesn't translate. Even the men, it's hard to do it week after week after week. But she looks like a different, more composed player. She was obviously in a Grand Slam final last year against Swiatek, but she lost in the French Open. But she beats her on the hard court, so she has that to her name. She wins in Washington, she wins in Cincinnati, and she will go into the U.S. Open full of confidence. So we'll see what that does for her moving forward. NFL news. Announced this morning, Baker Mayfield is QB1 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is something we all thought would happen. A veteran team. When we did the breakdown of the division, I said it was the only decision. Baker Mayfield has to be your guy to give this team a chance to win early in the year. But Baker Mayfield is QB1. He will be he's starting week 1. He's their guy. Kyle Trask will be the backup quarterback. So they have that decided in Tampa. Indianapolis Colts have granted running back Jonathan Taylor permission to seek a trade. If you recall, Jonathan Taylor requested a trade earlier in training camp, actually. Jim Irsay said, no, if you die tomorrow, nobody will care. We got to get over ourselves. Now they're saying go out and try to seek a trade, but they're saying we want at least a first-round pick in return, which decreases the likelihood of a trade happening significantly. Now, I think the Dolphins should be interested in Jonathan Taylor. I think the Buffalo Bills should be interested in Jonathan Taylor. I think the Eagles should kick tires. I think the Dallas Cowboys should kick tires on Jonathan Taylor because he could help their team. If you're a team that believes that you can win a Super Bowl this season, do it. Worry about paying Jonathan Taylor later. Let him play this year, and maybe it's a one-and-done thing. But if you win a Super Bowl, who cares? But I look at the Colts, I think they know this trade's not going to happen. That's what they're just going to let him do it. They'll let his agent poke around, talk to teams, see what happens. But Jonathan Taylor not being on the Colts roster is so detrimental. It's so hindrance to, not a word, it hinders Anthony Richardson, the rookie quarterback. This is not a smart decision. You need Jonathan Taylor to help the rookie, to help him get ready for the NFL. You don't have an elite offense. You need a great running attack to pair with an athletic quarterback. Your running back room is not exactly flooded with talent. Dalvin Cook has already been signed. Kareem Hunt is still out there. Okay, go sign Kareem Hunt. But go sign Leonard Fournette, whatever you want to do. But it's not... I don't think there's going to be a trade. I think Jonathan Taylor is going to start the year and finish the year in Indianapolis Colt. I'll make that clear from the get-go. But if the trade somehow happens and the Dolphins are willing to part with the assets that the Colts deem necessary for a player of Jonathan Taylor's status, I don't see the logic. I don't think it helps their team. I don't think the Colts plan on being great this year, but you want Anthony Richardson to be decent. Why start on the 10-yard line when you could start at the 30? Maybe he isn't starting at midfield after his rookie season. He goes through a lot of bumps and bruises, and it doesn't go all that well. But maybe he could be better if you have a team in front of him that is competent and you have a running back that helps him have easier passes and ease his transition from college to the NFL. Just a thought. But that would be my need here is who's running the football if John Taylor's not there? Zach Moss is not a number one running back. Deion Jackson is not a number one running back. Kareem Hunt is not a number one running back anymore if you go and sign him. He was a number 2 behind Nick Chubb for the last 3 years. He hasn't been asked to carry that burden. He hasn't been at training camp this entire time. So if you trade Jonathan Taylor, are you bringing in another back to learn your offense and to figure this thing out a week and a half before the season starts? Doesn't sound like a great plan. Again, I don't think it's going to happen, but I find extremely weird timing that they granted permission to seek a trade now when they could have done it weeks ago if they really want to get rid of him. Just perplexing timing. Over the weekend, Aaron Rodgers is going to start the final preseason game on Saturday for the Jets, his first preseason game since 2018. It's not really big news, but it's news. I didn't think he'd play in one, but he's going to. Sam Howell last night, I got to tell you, he looked fantastic. He's already been named the starting quarterback. He looked cool. He looked calm. He looked collected. He's got a mix of good arm talent and some athleticism. Threw 2 touchdown passes, one to his former North Carolina teammate De'Ami Brown, the other to Antonio Gibson. Terry McLaurin left the game, their best receiver. Hopefully he's okay. But Jahan Dotson had 5 catches for 76 yards. I think he'll have a big season. And the Commanders, we're going to talk about them. NFC East coming up on the preview shows. They got some skill there. This week, AFC East, NFC East, and we're doing college football preview. That'll be closer to Friday for the college football. So a lot of NFL coming this week, AFC East, NFC East. Then we just got the West divisions, which we'll do next week. And we'll do the quarterbacks. We're going to do offense talks. Still lots coming there. Other new, Brandon Hagel signed a long-term extension with the Tampa Bay Lightning this morning. 8-year deal. He's locked up. So that's interesting, I guess. Anything else here? Brendan Hagel is a good player. I'd take him on my team any day of the week, but the NBA fined James Harden $100,000 over his recent comments about Daryl Morey. Makes sense. Report, Seahawks wide receiver Jackson Smith and Jigba to have wrist surgery. He's their rookie, 22nd overall pick. He'll have surgery to repair a broken bone in his wrist, but still could be ready for the start of the regular season. He's having surgery today in Philadelphia. So that could be a tough break, pardon the pun, to start the season. CJ Stroud looked better. He is slated to start the final preseason game, so it looks like he's going to be the week 1 starter for the Houston Texans. Not a huge surprise, but I did think it could happen. Nick Bosa is still holding out with the 49ers. So he's not reported to get, neither as Chris Jones with the Kansas City Chiefs. There's a report that Josh Jacobs will end his holdout before week 1 with the Vegas Raiders. So there's that news as well. Anything else here? That's about it for today. Tomorrow, we got AFC East preview show upcoming. We'll talk about more and more in the world of sports, anything that comes up. We'll have more preseason throughout the week. MLB ongoing. So hope you guys enjoyed your weekend. Hope you enjoyed the show today. We'll be back tomorrow. Take it easy. Just to the point.